So welcome back to the Tree Surgery Podcast. We have Matt Rowden from Rowden's Tree Consultancy and Training. Welcome to the podcast, Matt.
Thank you for having me.
Cool. So tell me, how did you get into the industry? What was your first job like? How did you become a tree surgeon and now consultant?
Okay, I went to try and do some A-levels when I was 16 and absolutely hated it. Did not bond with the whole academia side of things. Yeah. And I remember I was either looking at an army career or I had to pick one other option for careers, and the chap from Sparshot College turned up on the day and said, you can climb trees and play with chainsaws.
Yeah, nice.
You get paid for it.
Yeah, cool.
Now, 16-year-old me went, that sounds fabulous.
Yeah,
of course I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
I'm there.
What, you get paid to climb trees?
Didn't worry about that. Did not worry about that. Did not even think about that. And that was, in hindsight, not necessarily the worst decision, but not an informed decision. Anyway, I went off there and went and did a national diploma, so it was a 2-year course. Within the first year, I got a job for a Winchester-based firm. Yeah. And they took me on afterwards. And actually, it was a brilliant learning experience. But I was thrown in the deep end very young. So you could look back on it now and I go, you would never do that with a 17-year-old apprentice now.
Yeah.
Going, you ever done a crane job before? No. Yeah. Off you go. I was very lucky to have a good crane driver.
In the deep end.
In the deep end.
Yeah.
Going off to do some big dismantles, crane work, things like that. But I think I was on £300 a week cash.
Yeah.
And that gives you an idea of the industry has moved on slightly since then.
Yeah. It has.
But,
a bit. but not that much.
A little bit. And I stayed there for a good couple of years. I cut my teeth and I learned an awful lot from that particular contractor.
Yeah.
And actually, I met a lot of people through him as well. He was, a lot of us called him the Bob Father of Winchester. A lot of the tree surgeons used to work for him and they went on to form their own companies.
Sure. So a good mentor, but not seeing it as a mentor at the time, just someone good to guide you through the industry.
Yeah, he did. He taught me how to do the job, which I can't knock him for.
Yeah, nice. And so after that, what happened next?
So during that period of time, I was actually working with another colleague at that company. And we reached the conclusion that we were like, actually, a lot of this we can do ourselves. Yeah. And again, I was young, cocksure, 20 years old. Older colleague went, do you want to go into business together? I'll put all the money up. So I went, absolutely. Yes. So
I'm up for it.
We turned up on our boss's doorstep on New Year's Eve and went, we're not coming back next year. Yeah. Probably the best way to behave. But again, I was 20.
When you're young, and I think also a little bit naive, like you just take chances. That's the great thing about being young is that you're in a position where you can take those chances and work it out as you go along.
Yeah, it's something that now I look back on that and I go, I wouldn't behave like that now.
Yeah. I think that's the way, I think a lot of people, when they start business, we're doing the job, we're working for someone, and then we think, why don't I just go and do this myself? Yeah. The whole grass is greener. And then actually, if you knew everything you knew now about running a business and running an arb firm, like you might, if you could just have a crystal ball and go, that's what it's going to be like, and all the years of stress and broken kit and all the other stuff that comes with it, would you do it? But then no one would ever do anything if they knew that.
No, you have to find out.
You have to work it out in some sort of way.
We're all on our own journey. We have to find it out for ourselves.
Yeah, agree.
So I went and set up my first business at 20/21, and we had a 7-year run actually as a partnership. It worked well.
Yeah. What sort of challenges did you face over that 7 years?
Do you know one of my biggest challenges over that 7 years was payment terms? Yeah. The biggest by far, because we got into site clearance quite early on. Yeah. So we'd start doing a lot of clearances for groundwork companies, stuff like that. So they could just get in and get digging. The problem is that they would not really want to pay until they had been paid for the first phase. Yeah. Now, if you're doing a multi-hectare site, say a 20-hectare site or something like that, we would be wasting 6 months plus.
And it's a killer. Like having no cash, I think probably when running HRG, the most stressed times I've ever been has been when there's no money in the bank and you're having to chase money and you also owe people money. You're trying to pay the lads. It's when I think my mental health drops the lowest, when there's not much cash. It's the hardest part of it, I think.
It's something that you learn to manage. Now, like back then, all I did was just went, I'll get an overdraft, get another overdraft. And I'm sure that misery of then going, we actually borrowed as much money as we possibly can do. I've still got a subby bill to pay for the end of the week. And you're literally scrabbling around trying to find cash. And one week I actually had to get a Wonga loan just to pay the subby bill, so that was a real struggle.
It is hard,
I found that stressful. But then I think other things besides that, obviously, is the ongoing competition that I've always found an issue. Is there's a huge race to the bottom with prices. Yeah. And so say we're in May now, a lot of people are quiet. You watch how prices, it's almost like an immediate reaction. People go, oh no, right, dropping 20% off their price. But hang on, that's your profit.
To go and work for nothing. It's like some people are paying their clients to do their tree work. It's just because they don't know the numbers. and there's this constant race to the bottom. I think I was on a mastermind call the other evening, and we were looking at all my sales and marketing sheet, and our conversion for domestic in the last 2 months is 9%.
That's dreadful, isn't it?
9%. Mike's going out quoting every day, and he's doing 30, 40 quotes like a week some weeks, and then suddenly you're winning 9%, and you're like, we're probably quoting about 50, 60 grand's worth of domestic work. We obviously do the commercial work. We win a lot more commercial work, but that's also still starting to get a bit more race to the bottom now. It makes no sense for people to do it that cheap. There's always going to be the cheap guys, but as you're right, people get quiet, they get nervous, and they just slash their prices. And then you think, why are you working for nothing? Because something's going to break. Someone's not going to pay you for 60 days.
Something has to break.
And then it's all very much more stressful. So it's hard, the race to the bottom. What do you think the solution is for that?
Do you know, I know it's illegal, but I genuinely think that there is the space in this market for a cartel.
Yeah.
We have something like OPEC, which is a legal cartel which controls the price of oil because they judge the price of oil to be important.
Yeah.
Now, we work in a highly dangerous industry where the potential for accidents to happen is huge. And the biggest cause of accidents, I would argue, is rushing.
Yeah.
Certainly, the reason I walk with a limp is because I was rushing when I was 25.
Yeah.
Every single accident I've had has always been lack of time, lack of money.
Yeah. Pushing the boundaries. And the two biggest things that get cut when you're rushing is safety and quality.
Yep.
Because you're just trying to go through it. And it's quite funny you say about oil. It's like oil is treated as this like precious, we need more of it, but actually we need more trees and we need to look after our trees better. No one values good tree surgeons who actually have knowledge about trees and how to prune them, when to prune them, looking at veteran trees, all that kind of stuff. There's a massive lack of that. And most people, we were having this conversation again on the mastermind the other night that one of the guys said, look, I've got values and I don't cut hedges or reduce them through bird nesting season. I'll then refuse to do it. A week later I'll go past and someone's absolutely butchered it.
Someone's butchered it or run a play over it.
Yeah, because there's always somebody who will just do the work because they want the money. So it's tricky.
I was saying to your colleague Claudine the other day, I was saying our industry is one of the very few industries where the operators can know virtually nothing about the medium they're working on.
Yeah.
You don't have a mechanic go do an engine rebuild without knowing the in-depth knowledge of how the entire car works. You don't have a surgeon performing surgery on the human body without knowing everything about the way the human body works. But we will get an 18-year-old to pop on a harness, up you go, without knowing anything about the physiological functions of that tree, what they're doing to it, or why they're doing to it. And that's, I think, is one of the biggest failings that we're facing at the moment.
Anyone can do it. But who do you think it needs to be? The Arb Association, the ICA?
The Arb Association is not a governing body. It's self-appointed. And it's not to say they don't do good things. It's not to say that they don't set a very rigorous standard, that you're AA registered, I think it's a contractor. But I don't think it's necessarily something that is tackled by bodies like that, whether it be the ICF or the Arb Association. I think it's more something that has to be done from the ground up, as in me, you, your employees, the people that actually do the job start going, we're not grunts with a chainsaw, we are healthcare professionals. And I think it's the biggest upsell. If I go in as a consultant, go and assess a tree, I'm charging a healthcare professional rate. It's considerably more than a contract climber, which actually it's not something that I think your standard operator should shy away from. I think it's something everyone should aspire to be able to say that tree died for this reason, for instance, to give that expert advice. And if we can all give that expert advice, we can all charge for that expert advice. And that's where the prices start to then rise up. We can fix prices higher. Because we're not paying someone £100 a day to drag brash. We're paying this expert £300 a day because he's an expert. And that's the biggest thing I've seen in the industry in the last 20 years is the wages just haven't gone up like compared to anything else. Not really. I mean, there was, I think there was a jump, certainly in the subby climber all my career, there was a significant jump after Brexit. About 25% jump, which happened within that year. But otherwise, you're absolutely right. I don't think they have.
No, it's not. I think our team leaders run about 25 grand a year when I first started, and I guess they're like 35, 40, but that's still 20 years of like inflation and everything else like that. So you think that it needs to be solved from the ground up? So that's company leaders to be able to be doing that. And I know we've talked offline about NPTC and how those standards are in the industry. Is that something you think needs to be linked in with the training and the assessment and everything? So how would you see that working, and what's your current thoughts on the Lantern NPTC courses?
Last year I really actually dug into the NPTC process of like how assessors are assessed and the whole verification model that goes behind it, and their quality control and things like that. What I found really shocking with it is actually the content of your standard NPTC course. And I'm going to use the small fell course, which used to be CS31 back in our day. It's called something completely different now.
Yeah.
But the small fell course, now the basis of that course is that you have to fell one tree using a standard cut. You have to extract one hung up tree, and you have to use one technical cut, whether it be a Danish pie or a forward leaner cut. So technically you can complete your felling assessment based on felling 2 trees.
Yeah.
That is it.
Yeah.
And I shadowed 2 days, and I watched some people going out into the woods and some kids felling trees exceptionally badly, and they passed. Have a chainsaw, go off and work on any site you like.
To be fair, I passed my CS31 and I'd cut straight through my gob cut, but because I'd shown that, not my gob cut, my hinge, and because I'd shown that I'd marked out my area and I exited it, the tree kind of still went in roughly the right direction. I passed.
Yeah, I suppose it's in the right place.
Yeah.
But what I think would be a much better idea, and NPTC is very against this. They like to have zero conflict of interest. You can't assess students that you taught, that kind of thing. But actually, I think it would work much better as an integrated assessment when the instructor assesses his own students, because who knows their students better than the instructor?
Yeah.
And the instructors that I've met are really, really dedicated to getting their students through. I've never met an instructor that didn't care.
Yeah.
But they're trying to rush them through in 5 days or even less. I think you can do a felling ticket in 3 days now.
Yeah.
And that's far too short. It took me a year to be proficient at felling. I still make mistakes now. I'm nearly 20 years into it.
Yeah. And technically, you don't even need to do any training. You could just phone up and go and do an assessment.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And from my understanding, if I'm right, and you probably know more of this, to train somebody, you don't even need to be qualified, or you don't need to be a qualified assessor to train somebody.
No, you don't.
Like anybody could train anybody, basically. Like you could walk in here tomorrow and me being the boss of the company, I could go, this is how you fell a tree. You've booked in for you.
You can put me through it.
You put you through it.
Yeah. As long as I memorise the questions, and it's fine, you can print them all off.
Yeah.
It's very straightforward. And it's like, if we're basing someone's competence on their ability to regurgitate answers to fairly banal questions and their ability to fell 2 trees badly, and that is it, and that is what we are basing someone's competence and safety on, we're not just letting those people down, but we're actually letting the industry down as a whole. Because how can you charge ridiculous amounts of money if one of you guys can go and do the training within 2 days?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where's the justification for that?
Yeah.
It's not like going, it's taken them 3 years to get to this point.
Yeah.
Which in reality it will do. It will take 3 years, I would say, as a minimum to become an efficient cutter.
Yeah.
But if you can go off and do the qualification in 2 days where there's no perceived value, and then it's a knock-on effect, because then go, how do you attract the best candidates? If the wages are low.
Yeah, I think that's got to be one of the factors why we've had such a staff shortage in the recent years, that there's 2 things. One, it's not producing enough people coming into the industry, because the wages, actually, you can go and work in McDonald's and not get soaking wet, not being out in the cold, not have to drag brash through some tight garden, or all the other like strains of being a tree surgeon.
Yeah.
And you can get paid the same amount of money, get a pension, all that kind of stuff. So it's not attracting more people because they're not choosing to go and do that. But also because you can go and work for someone and be on like 30 grand a year, people go, I can't live on this wage to go and buy a mortgage. So my only option really that I know is go out and either be a subcontract climber, and we've got a ton, I wouldn't even like to put a percentage on it, but I would almost say most of our subby, not contract, there's some really good contract climbers, but there's some terrible subbies out there who want to go and charge 200, 250. They don't turn up with any climbing kit or barely any. It's not low-load. They don't turn up with saws. They want to start at 8:30. They want to finish at 2. That kind of culture.
That sounds dreamy.
It does. It sounds dreamy. I think all my guys would love that. Or they go, I need to start my own business. And then we then have part of what forms people then going into business, what I call accidental business owners. Like, I'm not opposed to anybody going and starting their own business. Like, from a young age, I always wanted to start my own business. My dad was always in my ear, start a business when you're young, start a business when you're young. That was what I wanted to do. I did lots of stuff at school through my childhood of trying to work out how to make money, car washing at the age of 13 and things like that.
Yeah.
And I'm not opposed to people starting their own business and getting through it. But I think there is a lot of people, and there's been people on the mastermind who have said, if I was paid an extra 10 grand a year and had a boss that looked after me, I would have never started my own business. I would have been quite content. I don't even want to do this, but I need more money. So then we've got this catch-22 where we've got loads of small businesses who are going around and being one-man bands, and then they're potential staff members in the company, and we've got no one wanting to come through, which then leads us to having a staff shortage. But we're still not in a position where people are putting prices up.
Well, do you know what I mean? Obviously, I joked when we came on here, I was like, come talk about the matrix. But it is the matrix, and the tree surgeons built it themselves. And that is the depressing thing, is when I started, the actual wage that I started on was £40 a day. And that was back in 2007. It was barely minimum wage. The people that would come in, and this wasn't just that company I was working for, it was a lot of the companies around Winchester operated in exactly the same way. They were established businesses, dragging completely unqualified people in from the pub or whatever. A lot of cash changing hands, not very much going to any particular one person. And there was zero investment in staff or looking after staff. And to a certain extent, I was an accidental business owner. Did I really was I ready to start a business at 20? No, absolutely not. And I would have stayed probably for another couple of years had I been paid the right money, but I wasn't.
Well, it's just not sustainable to be paid low wages all your life. At some point, you're going to want to have a family, kids, get a mortgage, live a life, be able to go off traveling, do whatever you want to be doing. We digress, but this is the amazing thing about this podcast. So circling right back to the NPTC Lantra stuff. So from what I'm understanding is it should be almost like an apprenticeship, but not like the apprentices are currently formed, where you've got to study at something over a period of time. So is it the improvement in the training you want to see, or an improvement in the assessment, or both?
The training, actually, I think the training is perfectly adequate. Every instructor I've met, worked with, the training's good. It's the assessment that is poor, and it's the lack of time allotted to it. Now, I think what I proposed, and I did talk to an instructor about this the other day, he's a Lantra instructor, and I said, what if it was a month-long integrated course? So the guys come to you, they spend a month with you, they learn everything. You do that as, say, cross-cut, maintenance, small fell. You do that, the guys stay with you for a month. At the end of that month, they'll all be up to the same level. You won't have weak candidates and strong candidates. They will all be strong. And you can actually sign them off and go, they're ready. Most instructors, I can guarantee, would be able to do that.
But what about taking a member of staff out of a company for a month? Because that's a long time for one person to not have it.
Well, it's a long time, but then I suppose if you said, I'm going to take 3 years out and do a degree. That's a long time. That's a long time. What this is essentially is staff investing in themselves. Whether the staff pay for some of it or all of it.
And the business investing in themselves. I think if you go to any corporate companies, or like I worked for Barclays Bank before I did any tree work or anything when I was out of school. I was 18 years old. And I think for the first 6 weeks, I was back from Bristol doing customer service, sales training, interview training. Like they just ploughed like the amount of training, and they weren't, obviously they're in a position, Barclays Bank in a financial position where they're fucking loaded, and they're not going, okay, this is time to invest. And I guess then this whole thing circles back round to the pricing, the money, and being able to bring somebody in. Because usually, and you've probably had this experience, and you've probably employed people where someone comes in for an interview, you go, you don't look too bad.
You look really great on paper.
You look great on paper. Right, you've got a job, come in Monday. They come in Monday, you give them kit, or they've got their own kit, and you go out. There's no induction process, there's no training, there's no don't do this. This is where you feel like the fuel. It's just crack on, off you go. And then we expect people to be great. So, I guess that's because the margins are so tight that everyone just needs some number of staff. We need to get them out earning straight away. So it's just doing the full circle all the time, isn't it? Which you come back
it's
to.
It's a sort of chicken egg thing. If you're going, we need better training, we need better knowledge, and then we can charge more money. Except we can't do any of that because no one's charging enough money.
Exactly that. So you believe that if we were to be able to then train our staff better and get almost like elite level tree surgeons, essentially, then we can then be able to charge more, businesses can charge more to be able to then get that. But then you're always going to have those people who don't get involved in that. I'm sure the Arbor Association, and I remember talking to Paul Smith, 10, 12 years ago, when we were first getting Arbor approved, and his theory was he wants to get as many contractors through Arbor approval. So everywhere you look, there is an Arbor Association tree surgeon, and it then self-promotes itself, and then it levels the whole industry up. and then everyone can charge more, and then it's a better industry for everyone in the long run. But essentially what the Arbor Association have done is they've stayed around 300, 350 contractors for that whole time. So they've lost some and they get more on. They're constantly assessing people, and then people get fed up with the scheme. It doesn't go anywhere. They don't earn any more money.
Would you say it's too expensive?
I don't think the scheme's expensive. I think the scheme is affordable. I don't know what it costs me every year, 1,500 quid a year or something.
That's not too bad, actually. It's not chat, is it?
No, it's not a lot of money. Yeah. It's everything that comes with it of running a proper arbor firm, which is what people should be doing anyway. Like it's having all your stuff pat tested in your office and making sure that you've got a health and safety manager or consultant, and you've got everything, all your stuff on bunded tanks, and everything's loaded and everything's checked and everything's in its right place and everything's got chain catches. The list is endless, but
sure, and all those things get lost,
and all those things, and it's still too easy for somebody to go, I'm going to be a tree surgeon, I'm going to get a garage for 50 quid a month, I'm going to have a van and chipper that's 10 grand's worth, and I'm going to buy a few tools, and I'm just going to go out, put leaflets through doors, not invest in anything, go and charge 600-700 quid a month, not have the processes, health and safety, all that kind of stuff, and still make a living that might be just a bit more than what they've been earning working for someone, or sometimes not, because I've met tree surgery business owners that have been doing it 10 years and they're paying themselves 25 grand a year, and you're like,
there's a surprising amount of people doing that, which I'm just like, what's the point? Go and work for someone else.
So like literally, you can go and work for someone else for 50 grand a year now. Like a next business owner is like one of the most useful people you can have in working for you.
Because they'll never set up another one.
And then at least you can just leave it at the end of the day. So talking about the Arbor Association, I think that kind of dream or that process that they thought about of how everyone being arbor approved. And I believe that if everybody was arbor approved, every tree surgery business had to be arbor approved because of the level of the amount of investment it costs to get through the approval, not for the actual fee, but to set your business up as a proper business. Then everyone would have to put their prices up. You wouldn't be able to charge.
And that's where we get into the cartel that we were talking about earlier. Essentially, you've got an informal cartel at that point because you have to charge those prices. You have to be all on the same level. Certainly with plumbing, you used to have Corgi registered, I believe it's gas safe now. You just couldn't do that. You couldn't work on something like that unless you were registered. Is there a potential to do that with our industry? I'm not entirely sure the Arbor Association is the right body to take it forward because, as I said, they're not technically our regulatory body. It's technically the ICF. And I think there needs to be a bit more fluidity between, say, Arbor Association, ICF, LANTRA, NPTC, the awarding bodies for arboricultural qualifications. That's SEG, ABC, BTEC, whatever BTEC's called now. Everything keeps changing. There needs to be a homogenous, they need to be talking to each other.
They do.
And that's how you could start to then build this as a slightly more reproducible industry than some aerial gardeners with substance abuse issues, which is how we're viewed by a lot of people.
We are. I think we're almost viewed by the Arbor Association, to be fair. I think they're very pro consultants and not very pro contractors, is the kind of feeling that I get as a contractor. But I think you're right, like the fact that the Arbor Association aren't our regulatory body, because the thing is, only way that I see it is that there's some sort of regulation that all councils, you have to be arbor approved. All insurance, if you own a home, if someone works on your tree, they've got to be arbor approved or not arbor approved, ICA, whatever they choose, whatever it is, that then if there's work done, it's done by them. Otherwise, they're not covered by their home insurance if anything happens to their tree, for example, etc., etc. And that would then start to mean people would have to invest in whatever the accreditation is or whatever the certification is, which would then give more money to come into the industry, which would then mean that part of that certification would be putting the guys through the extra course or time of course that you want to be able to make it a thorough course. We stop, as you say, having people coming through and basically causing injury to themselves or potentially someone else. We've all seen the videos constantly online of near misses and also some pretty rough ones where you have to
dreadful mistakes.
Pretty dreadful mistakes. And that's what we've got to try and stop as an industry, that people go to work and they come home with all their limbs intact, being able to walk, being able to still provide for their family and have long careers rather than having to feel like they're going to get injured. So I take it, just going back to what you said when you were 25, if you've got a dodgy hip, did you have an accident yourself there?
Yes, so I was doing some speed lining out in the field somewhere in Andover, freezing cold, and we had inadequate equipment. I was like, don't worry, I can make it work. And I dropped an ash limb into the zip line under tension, and it came down on the back of that leg, and I was thrown the other way. So my leg stayed where it was. And I was thrown underneath it in a big tangle of spaghetti, going, I'm in agony. I have no. So I basically dislocated the entire lower bit of that, just somewhere over there.
Ouch.
So screaming, going, I have no idea how to get down. Literally no idea how I'm going to get down. And it's funny because all that aerial rescue training was irrelevant because actually what happened is I was still conscious. So the chap on the ground went, can you tie a knot?
Yeah.
I was like, yes, I can. Probably not delivered that calmly, but so we sent a knife up and a lowering line, and I tied it onto the bridge of my harness, and I cut everything else.
Yeah, and you got down.
And I got down, and I was down in 2 minutes.
Yeah, it was the quickest way to get down.
Quickest way. And then I sat in the field freezing for an hour. In shock. So it wasn't the most fun.
Even going back to what you're talking about, just aerial tree rescue, yes, you go up. But how I've known of people that have been rescued. How often do you think someone gets injured and gets rescued exactly the way you do it?
If you do that, you get your corpse down in general. Which is quite morbid.
Yeah, it is. So even that could use some different scenarios and be able to look at actual real life scenarios. Like Steve Shackleton does a bit like Mediarb. He does a Mediarb similar course for us, ex-paramedic, and he does great things with like fake bodies and blood and everything, where it actually puts you in that real life situation. And that's like almost what it needs to be for the aerial rescue, is putting it into different scenarios, different setups, different trees. Because not one tree, you always go into a nice, when you do your training, you go into a nice oak tree, like that one in the middle of a field that's got like
you'll never work on. You're never doing work.
You're never doing work on it. That's not what we do on a daily basis. It's very rare. We do work to a tree.
That's why I feel like, for instance, the double rope system that was, I think it was 2019, HSC went, we want two separate anchor points at trees now. It was certainly that I was like, it's well-meaning. It's very well-meaning, but to a certain extent, I think it's incredibly misguided. And I was slightly irritated in that at that point I'd been in the industry about 15 years. And I was like, I don't know anyone that was asked to peer review this. Were you?
No.
Did you know anyone?
No.
You've been in it for a long time.
All I know is that SSE have been doing it for a long time. And they decided to do that for, 15 years ago. It was all an uproar back then on SSE. And then it was just continuous, that it was just one rope everywhere else. And then suddenly, they had, I guess they must have had fatalities or something, where someone's fallen out of a tree, and then that's been their corrective action to add in. I think they've wanted to make it in line with IRATA, haven't they, really?
Yeah.
But again, completely similar, but different.
Similar but different. And again, it's like, it can be practical in a big open grown oak tree, like we said, that we never really work on. By all means, have 2 anchor points. Great, you can do that. If you're, for instance, dismantling a tree with a crane, I can't think of anything more dangerous. I really can't. Having 2 anchor points there, you need to get out of the way and your escape route is down. Or if you sever that brachial artery, go, great, I can operate one descender or a sender or a prusik, but I haven't got enough hands now. And so things like that, I'm like, meaning, but
it needs more context.
So much more nuanced than just going, here's a one-size-fits-all Band-Aid, that's how we're going to do it from now on.
Agree. But as you say, I didn't see any consultation. I guess the Arbor Association must have consultation, but I think, I don't want to keep ribbing the Arbor Association. I just don't feel like there is enough communication with the rest of the industry on what's happening. They've got their own contractors Facebook page, which I'm on, which obviously I'm a approved contractor. So we get stuff, we get emails, but the 300, 350, I don't know how many ARB businesses there are. I've tried to do the numbers, but there's 10,000 or more. And that's just ARB. There's ARB, landscapers, gardeners, fencers, all sort of people that do ARB.
Heroes, weekend warriors.
Yeah, exactly. But I just don't see the communication going out there, really. I mean, they did great stuff with the red diesel thing, but there needs to be, if they want to be that leading accreditation, there needs to be more communication with contractors.
But it's a bit like, I would say, for instance, British standards, which I wrote an article about it for ProArb a couple of months ago. Now, British standards changed. They changed in 2010, so it's just a few years after I'd left college. So everything I'd learned on my national diploma was irrelevant, allegedly, apart from not much changed. Have you read them? Have you ever read them?
No.
Do you know how much they cost?
Yeah, like 100 and something
quid.
£290.
For BSI,
okay.
For a non-member. So you've got these, like BSI, who are they? How many people have actually heard of them? A lot of people will say all our work is done to BS 3998.
Yeah, they've never read it.
Never read it.
Yeah, we've got a copy. I know we've definitely got a copy, but and I've looked through some of it, but we definitely haven't read it. And I know all our teams haven't read it. So,
But it's one of those things where, I have actually read it, and I had to do it for my level 6.
Yeah.
But the substance of it is, I don't think it's very good. I genuinely don't. I think a lot of it is outdated. And I now have a lot of tree officers leaning on these standards, going, oh, this work's not to British standards. And I'm like, actually, you're meant to be a experienced arboriculturist. You're just doing as BSI tells you?
Yeah.
Or is there more to it?
Yeah.
Can we be a bit better? Certainly British standards, I think, really are in need of review. At the moment, they're 15 years old since their last review.
Wow. And there must be a lot more information out there, and almost a lot more science information, backed information out there that would need to go and back that.
It's quite our industry is so under-researched.
Yeah.
At the moment, in this country, we've got Duncan Slater up at Myerscough. He does a lot of very good research. I've read a lot of his articles.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
But otherwise, we haven't got a lot going on.
Yeah.
But I think the overall thing really is that in my career, the way in which we cut trees has not changed. So the kit we use has got a lot better.
Yeah.
The procedures that we might follow, or for instance, double rope techniques, that's changed.
Yeah.
But has anything changed for you in the way that you would prune a tree now as opposed to 20 years ago?
No.
Now, why do you think that might be?
Just the lack of investment or interest in the industry, the lack of resource.
That's what I mean. So I've always compared our knowledge of trees. It's almost like 17th century medicine.
Yeah.
A lot of it is we're having a go. We don't fully know.
We're working out as we go along.
And there's a real lack of empirical data.
Yeah.
So we've got Duncan Slater doing brilliant work. He's doing like pull testing on unions to test crop strength, say an included union, stuff like that. Very interesting stuff. And it's done scientifically. But what we actually need is empirical data. And that is every single competent cutter that goes out, every tree surgeon can be making those observations, and they should be. And just because, for instance, you're not a consultant or not necessarily have a formal arboricultural qualification, does not make those findings any less valid.
Yeah.
You've got some very experienced old boys cutting trees that can make very good observations.
Yeah, and I guess with technology these days, all you need is some sort of app where someone can just upload it.
We have Tree Alert already for reporting diseases.
With AI as well, and how that's work, and literally list like fast tracking all tech now, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's there for sure. So what do you think the answer is then on that? Just for more collaboration, as you say, again, between BSI, ICF, AA, the whole lot.
How many acronyms have we listed so far on this chat? How many? Seriously.
So loads.
The main thing that we can get from this is there's too bloody many of them.
Yeah.
We don't need that many. We need one body. Yeah. And if these different organisations want to club together and create that body, so be it.
Yeah.
But we need one, and it needs to be regulatory.
Yeah. Agree. So take me back to 25. You've had your accident. You're still running your firm with partner.
Yeah.
So what was the next steps in your career after that?
Actually, that accident psychologically took me a year to get over.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So actually, the healing, I was back climbing within 2 months.
Yeah.
But then I just remember getting up a tree, freezing, going, I know what I need to do. I don't want to do it.
Yeah, I can feel that. When I had my TIA last October, it's taken me a long time to get over that. I think it's you don't like the physical part is getting recovery from that, but then it's the mental side, isn't it?
Yeah,
for sure.
I spent that year actually trying to build the business up. Like we've been going a few years, 5 years then. So I did spend a lot of time doing actually quite a lot of things that you've talked about, sitting on the phone for hours and hours trying to find whoever works in procurement for, say, Radian Homes or Sovereign Housing or whoever it would be.
Yeah.
Like hours and hours. My success rate was very slim, but we did get the occasional one or two things. But I think one of the best things that I did in terms of business management, actually, or getting work, is that I put a few donations towards charity shoots.
Yeah.
Now, shoots are brilliant because a lot of rich people go to them.
Yeah.
A lot of people who own a lot of land go to them.
Yeah.
So I just put, say, 2 men for the day plus truck and chipper.
Yeah.
I'm giving away back then, maybe giving away £500 or £600 worth of work. That was about it.
Yeah.
And I got into 3 or 4 different estates by doing that. You tell the estate manager going, that's brilliant. Yeah, I'll buy that.
Yeah.
There's 50 grand's worth of work.
Yeah.
It was the best advertising I ever did. And it was the most cost effective.
Yeah. Networking is just key, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And as you say, finding out where wealthy people hang out.
I would say this proverb or phrase that's like, don't marry money, go where money is.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've heard that, but I think it does absolutely ring true. If you hang around with a certain caliber of people, which say I spent my 20s hanging around with a bunch of tree surgeons, going to the pub, getting drunk with them, drinking pretty much most of what I'd earned that day, and then going on holoday with the rest. It's great. Didn't move any further forward though.
Yeah.
If you spend your time, I don't know whether it's playing golf, shooting, fly fishing, where you're hanging around with a different caliber of people, by all means still hang around with the tree surgeons.
Yeah.
You can elevate
100%.
position.
I do a whole piece of this in the 3-day course about a lot around mindset and everything. And part of it is your environment and your network. And it's exactly, I talk around that, like yacht clubs, fishing, flying clubs, like health, fitness clubs, all that kind of stuff. There's a guy called Matt Fidesz who he's a martial arts guy, nothing to do with the art world, but he used to be Michael Jackson's bodyguard. And away from Michael Jackson's weird stuff, he was a very successful businessman. And where he was his bodyguard, he spent years and years in every single business meeting that Michael Jackson had. He's now a multi-millionaire because he was just surrounded by all these people, all the ideas, the questions, the inspiration, the environment of it, and he just went. Yeah.
They do say your network is your net worth.
Yeah.
And I do absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, agree.
But, I spent, like I said, I was a subcontract climber for all of my career. Even when running a business, I always subbed to other companies. And it was, in hindsight, actually, it's been really good for me now because I laid a customer base down of going, I've worked for 50 or so, I've climbed for 50 or so companies over my career. Yeah. Some of which I wouldn't go back to. For instance, some of the large ones that were up in the Midlands, I wouldn't go there again. But lost them. Very good people, very experienced, good tree surgeons, and a great network to have.
Yeah, nice. Good. So tell me, you did your business for 7 odd years or something?
7 years in the partnership. Yeah. And then some creative differences.
Okay. Yeah. Which happens in partnerships.
Yeah. My business partner was a bit older. He was a family man. I was in my late 20s, wanting to make as much money as physically possible and felt a little bit held back. So we went our separate ways. Yeah. And I did 2 years running another business, which actually was so much harder than I expected it to be. I thought I'd walk out to a brand new customer, to my original customer base, and things would be the way they were. But actually what I was doing was starting fresh. I gave away my phone number. I had no website. And all these things made a massive difference. Started again. And it was okay. It's getting okay. Like I've got work coming in. And then my first job, the boss of my first job had a fatality.
Sure. What, doing tree work?
Doing tree work. And this sad, I'd worked with him on and off for about 4 months. And upsettingly, the last thing I said to him is, actually at 28, I think you're too old to be getting into climbing. I think it's too late to start. You need to start when you've got no fear.
Yeah, no fear, and you've got a nice young body to,
exactly.
to bend and recover from knee injuries and back and everything like that.
Awful. But very tragically, he cut himself out of a monkey puzzle tree.
Shit. I remember that.
In Winchester.
I remember hearing about that. Wow, okay.
I was lucky not to be on site, and the lads that were, I think it was very traumatic for them.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But the upshot of it was, and it really hit home to me, as I went, there is absolutely no way I can ever make that phone call to someone's mother or to someone's wife.
So I don't know whether this is a bit of a direct question or not, but I guess one of the reasons why you're so passionate about the industry standards and the training is because of this. And do you think that if there was more in place that he would not have got to where he got to and he'd still be with us today?
Without wishing to criticise anyone involved in that tragedy, the biggest issue there was time and money. Yeah. It was those two things. Money leads to time.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And I think if we went and analysed all of the industry incidents, I could probably say that a lot of that would have been, again, rushing time. We still have to push our guys, and I try not to get them to a fatigue point. Like, it is all about the margins are tight. You've got to get them working hard, and it's all that they are. Our biggest asset there, the productivity. So you've got to push them along. And it's, again, more money in the industry. It's taking more time care, more money going into training, more money going into before doing the actual task experience. Would all be factors to stop that. So I'm really sorry to hear about that, man.
It was, like I said, I wasn't on site. It was something that I was very much separate from. I found it traumatic, and that was very pivotal in me going, I actually don't enjoy running my business. It was a sudden epiphany. I went, I don't like this. I don't like looking at work after I've done the actual cutting. I don't like spending my weekends doing planning applications. I don't like waiting months to get paid. I don't like bouncing off a 40 grand overdraft. Like, this is all rubbish, and it's not what I got into this to do. So I sold up and I went travelling.
Nice. Sounds like you probably needed it after that. Bit of soul searching.
A bit of soul. I don't know if I actually found myself in any way, shape, or form. I think I just got drunk for 6 months.
But you had a bit of fun while doing it.
But then I got back to the UK just in time for lockdown to happen. And that's when I actually went, I need to get into the academic side of this. And I was, at that point, I was like, I don't think I ever want to climb again.
Yeah.
And it was back when we had Jeremy Corbyn and Theresa May, each pledging, or might have been Boris Johnson, and each pledging to plant more trees than there is space on the British Isles.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm getting out at the wrong time. This is when I should be getting in. And that's what prompted me to then go off and do further qualifications. And that's something that I think a lot of arborists, like a lot of you guys, when they're getting into their 30s, need to be thinking about the next steps. Because these courses are available. They're very good.
Yeah. Yeah. Instead of just leaving the industry, which a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Like I've seen it so much, they either burn out and they go and get an office job, being a manager for a company. And most of us, like you said at the beginning, didn't like A-levels. I failed on my GCSEs.
Yep.
Like I can't spend too much time in my office because I just end up staring at a screen and going crazy. So people don't want to go into the office, but then they still want to go and do something outside. So I think that's a really valid thing to say. So after that, you started your consultancy.
I did.
Yeah, which you do some great work for us now as well.
I did, yeah. No, you're an excellent client.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's what I'm doing at the moment. The next step will be possibly to get an ecologist on board because it dovetails very nicely with a lot of the building assessments that I do. So anything BS 5837, it's not a BSI publication, very boring, which a lot of that dovetails very nicely with ecology. Yeah. And that's possibly the next route I'm going to look down.
Yeah. And so you basically contract climb a bit for people still, so you still keep your foot in with that.
So I'll do 2 to 3 days a week climbing for a few different companies. And I do so for a couple of reasons. One is that otherwise I'm going to get very fat. But the other is that it's about keeping foot. It's a networking thing in part. You know, I could not contract climbing on the head and just consult. I'd actually make maybe a little bit more money.
Yeah.
But people forget who you are very quickly.
Yeah.
I went out to subbing for 2 years and literally disappeared off the radar. Yeah. So it's something that I don't want to do again.
Yeah, definitely. And what sort of challenges do you find with consultancy and then transition from going from being tree surgeon to consultant, if any? There's some significant ones. It's when you're a tree surgeon, like I'm quite happy to turn up on the site, chainsaw trousers. You can be dirty. You can swear a little bit. You can be I can be myself. Yeah. But actually, as a consultant, the most important thing I'm selling is myself. Sure.
I'm there to sell expert knowledge. It's not the 15-page document I'm going to hand over at the end of it.
Yeah.
Because frankly, most people never read it anyway. It'll be read by a tree officer. It'll be stuffed in a file with the rest of the building reports. Yeah. And it'll never be looked at again. Yeah. So what I have to sell is myself.
Sure.
And I remember I took a lad outside shadowing with me a couple of months ago, and I said, I'd like you to take your nose ring out, and I'd like you to wear a shirt. And he was horrified. No one's ever told me what to wear. I was like, I'm telling you what to wear. You are selling yourself. We're charging a lot of money. You have to sell yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
And I think that's quite a big challenge for jumping from tree surgeon to consultant. But there's benefits as well. Like, for instance, as a tree surgery business owner, I felt constantly bullied by tree officers. Not all of them, get some nice ones. Yeah. But there is quite an unpleasant dichotomy in the industry where you've got the odd tree officer who's, I've got a tech cert or something like that will be vile, obnoxious,
and then you'll blow
degrading.
Me.
Like, you'll blow me.
I've had a fair few of those, and it's not fun.
It's actually not acceptable. And that's something that part of the reason I write articles for ProArb is to share some knowledge and go, look, things like legal case law questions, all these things, knowledge is power. Yeah. And no one should be having a tree officer go, I think that you can't do that, or that, and I'm going to ignore your emails. Or, as you told me, like you said, say reporting you to the Arbor Association.
Being reported to the Arbor Association, I drove past that tree the other day, and that was 12 years ago, and it's still there and absolutely in great condition. And we just pruned it. I think we were to reduce it 2 to 3 meters away from the building, and we did 3 and a bit meters or something like that. And I think it was a sycamore or something. So it was like, and I got reported.
Do you know what I'd say to the officer? I'd be like, what does your reduction look like then? Oh, wait, you've never done one.
Yeah. It was a little bit embarrassing for the tree officer in the end, because the Arbor Association were like, what is this report? This is nothing.
Yeah. But absolutely outrageous behaviour. From what I remind tree officers on a regular basis, I'm like, you are a public servant. Yeah. Like, I am not a customer. Yeah. You work for us. Yeah. And it can be quite empowering. I think that's something that, again, I think a lot of tree surgery business owners should get into, just getting a little bit more knowledge.
Yeah, so I guess now you've got the knowledge, this like top trumps.
I'm like, share the knowledge. Like, as many people know it. Don't have a tree officer quoting the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 to you. Know it yourself. Yeah. Then you'd be able to tell them why they need to get off site.
Yeah, leave me alone. Leave me alone. If you were to start your career in our industry all over again, especially this is for mainly people who are at the beginning of their career or quite young in the industry, what would you do differently?
If I was to go again, I would never have started my first business when I did. I actually think that my entrance into the industry, which is I went in, I did a formal qualification. So I went and did a level 3 national diploma. It actually set me up relatively well with a good baseline of knowledge to feel like I knew what I was doing. I think so many people have imposter syndrome. They're going into, I've got one of my friends who was on one of your courses, and he quite often doubts his own knowledge. And I'm like, you've been doing it for 25 years. You've got experience, but because he hasn't got that, say, initial, say, level 3 or something like that, doubts that baseline knowledge. But like I said, I wouldn't have started my first business when I did. It was too young.
Yeah. So would you have spent more time investing in yourself, investing in training?
I think I'd have cut my teeth better, stayed with a few companies and really learned, because certainly the accidents that I've had, I wouldn't have done had I worked with a few different people.
Yeah, you'd have got that extra experience. Yeah.
I think a lot of young lads will go, right, okay, I'll get better money being a subcontract client, which of course you can. But you've got these kids coming out going, oh, I want 150, 180, 200 pounds. But with not enough knowledge to actually make sure they go back in one piece.
Yeah. Yeah, we had someone who'd been doing it 3 years the other day who said they've now left their job becoming a subby climber, been doing it 3 years, they want 180 a day.
Yep.
They work 8 till 3, they don't have Lola on their kit, but happy to get it, and they've got PPE. And I was just like, I didn't even reply to that. And it's 3 years enough to be able to...
Absolutely not.
I started my business after 3 years, and I made some pretty big mistakes in that first year. And I'm lucky to be here or not injured or having something, because there were some hairy moments where I'd worked for 3 different companies over 3 years. I certainly didn't have the experience to be out there doing some pretty risky stuff on your own. But no, I guess that's just hindsight, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but that's what you do when you're young and cocksure. You get away with it, and eventually you stop getting away with it. And I suppose that's the point where you've got to be self-aware enough to stop.
Yeah.
But I mean, in terms of what I should have done and what I would now say that everyone should be doing, is that investing in yourself is something like, you don't qualify and go, that's me qualified, that's me done for life. Education done, that's it. What you need to do is to be constantly building, because education and learning builds in layers. And it's like what you're doing is constant looking for self-improvement. And so actually within 3 or 4 years of being in industry, I should have been looking to maybe do a level 4 or level 6. Within the next few years, I don't know, maybe I should look at doing a PhD, or maybe look at a legal qualification, because that interests me as well. What nobody should do is stay static.
And you start, if you're not growing, you're rotting.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Agree. And I've got a few more. The more that you earn, the more that you learn, the more you earn. But it does correlate.
Absolutely.
It does correlate completely. And I never understood that as a kid, because I just was naughty and
it's boring.
But
definitely boring.
Definitely boring. Just go and let's have it. But no, I agree that investing in yourself over a period of time is key to any success. Whether you're a business owner working for somebody, whatever, it's only going to improve you. The more value you can be to either your clients or to your boss, the more that you're going to climb up the ladder and also have better job satisfaction.
Indeed.
Because I think some of the times that I've felt most unhappy is when I'm winging it and I'm just trying to work out as I go along and not really knowing and having that imposter syndrome. But the more that you can learn and feel confident about yourself, the better it feels as well. Not only that the money correlates, but it's the better you feel.
I think the learning always has to go with experience. Like you can learn something, but you then have to put it into action, and you have to make a few mistakes. Because you then learn a bit more from them. And I get schooled by tree officers occasionally. I remember walking onto a site with a veteran tree on it, and I went, why is that root protection area so big? And he was like, if you'd read this thing by AFAG, you'd know it's 15 times the stem diameter with no cap. I went, no, I feel really stupid now.
But you learned something.
But I learned something. I learned something right there.
Yeah. Where do you see the industry going in the next 5 to 10 years? As I say, we've had loads of change with mech and everything coming through, and there's lots of magnes and 360s and a lot of machinery. And we're at a point where the climbers we're getting less skilled climbers and things. But as an industry itself, where do you see the next 5 to 10 years, how it's going to evolve?
I think that the age of lots of little companies springing up and nibbling away at a larger pie, I think that's going to start to go.
Yeah, I think it's going right now.
Yeah.
I've seen in the last 12 months so many businesses, people leaving the industry who have started through COVID.
Yep.
I did a piece the other day about the bubble being burst.
The golden age, wasn't it?
It was like there was so much work around, there was so much money around, and people made a lot of money through that time.
Yep.
But I think you're right, like the smaller businesses, at some point it's got to be less saturated because it can't keep on with these ridiculous prices.
I think even in an ideal world, we would end up with a core team of very strong climbers, and the majority of the work being done via mechanised means. That would be probably the best place to end up.
Yeah, as safe as possible with the mech, and what stuff you can't get the mech to, or you're still going to need some labour.
Because some highly
skilled elite labour who can come and do a pucker job.
Exactly, and hopefully paid properly as well.
Yeah.
We'd like to think.
It's got to
I think it's the age of having, say, 5 kids under 21, all paid less than minimum wage, pushing wheelbarrows around the site to move wood. It's not financially viable to do that anymore. Yeah. We never used to have things like the vans and skid steers, but now you don't need those 5 21-year-olds pushing a wheelbarrow around.
You definitely don't try to slice up massive oak rings and then split them all over, have a competition, see who can pick the heaviest one up.
Who can pick the biggest one up?
Yeah.
It's a rotator cup gone.
I am a fucking man. No, I agree. So we're just coming to the end of the episode. Is there any final words you'd like to say to the audience?
I would just say that you need to be constantly learning. As you say, the more you learn, the more you earn. I think anyone who is, say, towards their latter bit past their 20s or in their 30s, you should be looking at a further qualification in arboriculture just to get that knowledge up. And there is a lucrative career in consultancy. It's something that is absolutely something for the older guys to start looking at and to move their career onto.
Amazing. Thanks, Matt.
With.
Brilliant. And so if people want to follow you, like, where do you spend most of your time on social media?
I don't do a great deal of social media at all. I have an Instagram page. It's Rowden Tree Consultants.
Nice. We'll put that link in the episode notes.
That'd be fabulous. But otherwise, most of what I do is word of mouth. I network and I talk to people.
Good. And also you do an article in the Pro Arb magazine?
Pro Arb magazine. Cool. You can catch a regular article there.
Amazing. I've really enjoyed today. It's been a great conversation, and I'm sure you might get a few messages because it's been some really good conversation. So thanks for being on board. Fabulous. And looking forward to another one in the future.
Thank you very much, Henry.
Thanks, mate.